Even ready now. But welcome to this week's edition of Satterwhite Live. I'm Danny Grizzle, and I'm here today with Mark Hinline, who handles sales out of our Satterwhite office in Utah now.
Yes.
And that's pretty exciting. I've been listening to Mark work all day on the telephone. He's very diligent returning people's calls, so hey, flood him with calls.
Not too many.
I think Facebook is probably automatically turned on at the scheduled hour now, and as luck would have it, I think even the computer here, my laptop is frozen. So we'll just have to hope for the best. Man, today, folks, I went out on the yard and photographed a bunch of. We're in Utah, and this is the principal sawmill for Satterwhite log homes, and it's a giant facility. A lot of people stop by here, I think probably vacationing or whatever. Maybe it makes sense to me. We're on the edge of some of the world's most beautiful country.
Yeah, they come down historic Highway 89 and see the sign, and they pull in, and we get a lot of off-the-road traffic.
Yeah. So sawmills like this are built close to the timber. Because trees come down out of these mountains and they go through a huge manufacturing process here. I couldn't get all the pictures working today. Hey, we're winging it here because this is relocating just with a minimalist amount of equipment to do this live stream, and we've barely got this much on. But I did want to talk a little bit about, because we had an interesting episode of Satterwhite Live 2 or 3 weeks ago, with a fellow who came in to talk about land, a landman who is a real estate agent who specializes in locating land. And log homes are almost always a rural home that are built on land. And a lot of people don't understand if you've only lived in the city before, you might not understand all the detail that get involved with easements, and particularly what the difference between surface rights and mineral rights, and here in the West, water rights. All kinds of differences when you're shopping for land. Well, we had a very interesting comment that I thought was a great comment from someone that said, "This is too much detail for me. I didn't. All this stuff y'all made sound complicated is easy." And it is easy. Everything that we're going to talk about today, just right briefly, these things are actually pretty simple in any specific circumstance. So that if you're building on family land or you're living in the building nearby your current residence in a place that you've lived for years and years, well, then you're going to have friends, and it's just going to be a simple thing, a simple matter. But on the other hand, Satterwhite has a lot of customers who are thinking about building that dream home out in the country. Maybe they've never lived outside the city before. On the way up here, I drove up from Texas to the Utah office here, and I drove through New Mexico. A lot of people dream of living in New Mexico. We have many Satterwhite homes built there. And I drove through Colorado and into Utah. In all of these states, we have great many homes, and including Arizona. I know we've got many customers down there. Yes. Are you talking to anybody in Arizona, Montana, Idaho?
Got them going in all those states, right?
Nevada?
Wyoming?
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's literally tens of thousands of Satterwhite homes built all over the country. So if you're in that stage where you're thinking about, we don't want to make, like I say, this is going to be simple for any individual, but I'm looking out the window, right out this window here in this valley. I'll just talk to speak to the issue of geography. And, people, what is the first question everybody says on the phone? On the first call, Mark, it's always, how much?
Yes.
I'd like a price.
Yeah, and people get frustrated when you can't give them an exact price because there's just so many variables. We can get close. We can give them a ballpark, but
But along that way, you're going to have a little bit of conversation with them, and you're going to know these little details because we'll get an email saying, "Oh, I'm interested in the woodland, and how much would that be finished on my property. But when you have that phone conversation, and the reason that we ask people, we want you guys to call our 800 numbers, and it doesn't matter which 800 number you call, even if you call anything on our website, but you can call the one directly here in Utah, or the one for Georgia, or the one for Longview, but it doesn't matter. Our operators can transfer you. We'll take care of you and get you to the right person. But so anyway, we were just going to speak to, in that conversation, they're going to tell you a little bit of detail about where they're thinking of building or where they're hoping to build. That person who wants to build in Santa Fe is a different situation altogether than the person who wants to build in Colorado and the person who wants to build in Utah, which I'm reciting my path that I drove up here again.
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm just going to toss out some of these things are maybe political. So if you're building in New Mexico, for instance, a lot of people love to retire in New Mexico, and it is a gorgeous state. Ansel Adams, probably the most famous landscape photographer that's ever been, he wanted to live in New Mexico. He almost left Yosemite and all that he's famous for in the Sierra Nevadas of California, and he almost moved to New Mexico. It's so appealing. But New Mexico's a different animal than building in Texas or any of the surrounding states. Any place around here, if you had to get permits or any kind of thing, you'd normally talk to the county? Or
It's really a simple process. We help you draft, and then we have engineers that are licensed in every western state except California, and the draftsman turns those plans over to the engineer, and they take care of everything else, all the current laws, all the snow requirements, the wind requirements, and so the engineering staff are great, and they take care of those headaches for you.
We
It's
get
not
through
something you need to worry
through
about.
some of those simple things, but since we don't build the complete house, people are going to be involved at some level. Not in the state of New Mexico, all those building permits don't come at the county or local level. They come from Santa Fe. Everything has to be approved out of Santa Fe. They have a scoring system that's unique over there, so they're going to require some mix depending on where you're building. There's going to be factors in New Mexico. We're familiar with those things, and it's not the first time. Now, those kind of complications, if you're building in Texas or if you're building in North Georgia, or there are complications not complications, but there's special hurdles or special things that you have to know to build in, say, North Carolina. Kentucky, all the different states maybe have little different things. So a lot of times people want that turnkey price from us, and they're talking about, they don't understand. That's a legal thing as far as permits and things like just to carry that previous thing forward, because New Mexico is a particularly difficult state because of very stringent building codes, and they're all centrally administered out of Santa Fe. You take the same situation in the state of Colorado, and you can have snow loading and engineering requirements that, again, Mark, the people who do our plans are going to take these things into considerations, but you're going to have different engineering requirements, not only by county, but by the altitude of your home. So we're familiar with those things. Satterwhite's a national company. So we've just got this tremendous wealth of experience over nearly 50 years now of having and been a national company that entire time too. Yeah. So that we've dealt with just about anywhere that you turn, we've dealt with it. So let's flip. It's not just about building codes. I mentioned a minute ago, we're right here in Gunnison, Utah, where our principal sawmill is right here in the heart, almost the dead center of Utah.
Yeah.
And Utah is a fabulous state. There are 5 national parks right out the window to over my right shoulder here that are a lot of people. As I drove through Moab, Utah, boy, that place is at high season already because it's beautiful spring weather, and it's just amazing. I've been going through there since the 1970s myself, and Moab is, anyway, there's Arches National Park and Canyonlands down that way. There's other places. Utah is a fabulous place to build. Up more in the north, this office building happens to be, and the topic of today's show is geography of considerations for your log home and how these things are simple at your location, but they're not simple from us to be able to give you a price. It's not simple for us to make a price in every circumstance across the nation. We're going to need those details about where you're going to live. So this office happens to be in the Great Basin, which means none of the rain, none of the snow, none of the precipitation that falls here ever makes its way to the Pacific Ocean or to the Atlantic Ocean. It all winds up in the Great Salt Lake, which has no outlet to the ocean. And there's interesting consequences due to the geography here of this being in the Great Basin. So one of those consequences is just here at our main sawmill, and one reason we're not outside today is, besides it being terrifically windy, is most people have heard of the Great Salt Lake. And the Great Salt Lake is this evaporation pool that is tremendous. It's more salty than the ocean, but it's the residue of a great prehistoric lake that flooded these valleys of Utah, and a little of it went up into Idaho, and a lot of it went over into Nevada. If you're my age, you've heard of the Bonneville Salt Flats, where the world land speed records. I mean, it's just flat as it can be. And Lake Bonneville, back in prehistoric times, who knows how long it was there. I'm sure if we'd done our research, we would have read today. I'll put Mark on the spot. He's been on the phone all day. We didn't even hardly discuss this. But the consequence of this being the bottom of an ancient freshwater lake is if you can imagine silt and mud at the bottom of a giant lake that may have sat here for millions of years, that the soil here is unlike soil anywhere else, in that it's finer than talcum powder. And when the wind lifts up these valleys, I mean, it's like the great dust storm, what was that period called in American history where there are all those dust storms back in the Depression and all that, the Dust Bowl.
Dust Bowl.
Yeah, the Dust Bowl. And it's like that when the wind blows here. But there's other interesting things about that. If you were to build on this valley floor here, then there might be, for instance, some seismic considerations, because if you have an earthquake on this lake soil bed, there can be an effect called liquefaction, where that if you have a trembler here, now I don't think this would ever affect a log home. I really don't. But you could potentially have some foundation damages, and the state is known for Salt Lake City. One of the Latter-day Saint temples is being rebuilt right now to actually put a seismic foundation under it because of the potential for liquefaction and that the building could fall in an earthquake event here. And this is a seismic region. That's an engineering consideration here. So, and if you were to, I'm looking out, as I look out if we go up the hill just a little ways, you wouldn't be on the silt bottom of this, and you would be on a different type foundation system required. Everything matters when it comes to the geography of your home. All these details matter. If you build in, people ask us what all we do a lot of times. And if you're building over in Colorado, there's many places in Colorado where you're building on, why they call this the Rocky Mountains, because they're rocky. You can be building on, not on soil at all, but on rock. And so we get questions, what would be that turnkey price in Colorado? And we're thinking, where are you going to put that house? And because you're going to have to be sent out to talk to some local foundation people, because if you're building on rock over there, your foundation work could involve some guys who are licensed to deal with dynamite. It can vary that widely. And of course, all those things are costs that have to be considered. Again, none of this is complicated in any individual circumstance. It's where you intend to build. Too much. I've talked too long.
You're just fine. I do want to point out the prices you see on the website do not translate to the West. Because out here we need a bigger log, we need bigger timbers, we need to handle the snow load. We deal with freight costs that you don't on the website deal with. So those prices on the website are usually pricier out west.
And that's true. The geography and where you build from and where we have material staged from, the engineering requirements is a lot of those timber dimensions and things, and the snow loading on the roof. I made a smart aleck remark because we had a severe weather event in Texas this year where everybody got real cold and everybody's pipes burst, and all my friends on Facebook and other parts of the country says, "Oh, come on, it's like that here all the time. What are you guys crying the blues about?" Well, because we're not used to it, and when we brag, sometimes when we brag about the low cost of living in Texas, I think what we're really bragging about is the climate, because we don't have to, bear the expense in our home construction of engineered roofing systems and snow loading, and Texas is largely free of seismic activity, and so we get to build houses. We have a lower cost of living in Texas for actual reasons, not just because we're better than everybody else or anything.
Well, you are, but I mean, it's still.
Nobody agrees with you on that.
I love Texas.
I love Utah. I love being up here. I love the history. I'm gonna spend a little time on this trip and try to see some. My great grandparents rode the Transcontinental Railroad, so I'm going to go up to Ogden and walk through the train station, which was and go up to Promontory where they drove the Golden Spike and all that. I'm going to see. And just kind of relive it. If they made a movie about my grandfather, they'd have to get Robert Duvall to star, because I mean he went through it just like those range wars, and that all happened out here.
Oh, that's great.
So, folks, I thought about holding up this laptop and showing you the movies that I made today while the guys shut down. I heard the mill power down, because let me tell you, sawmills are noisy places, and I heard the mill power down out there, and I ran out there and I shot a bunch of video, and I edited that and had that all ready to give people a tour. And we're just here. We had to set up here in a little alcove of the office here. You can see behind us, I think that you can see some of the materials in the display, and even the spindles and the rails and different log types. So come see Mark here in Utah, or even any of our offices really. Because I'm going to tell you that LJ, if you're anywhere in the eastern United States, a trip to LJ, that is a fabulous model home. Before we leave, because we've gone probably 2 hours, but Charlie Peterson, this is Satterwhite Log Homes Principal Sawmill, and this is news to me, a brand new log profile that Charlie has prototyped here. And I think this thing looks great. Tell us about it, Mark.
This is a 7x10 Pioneer log. So it's flat on each side, and then it's usually got a small V groove up both sides. But one of the contractors here a couple weeks ago, his wife had an idea that she wanted a different look. And so Charlie milled this log, and then they took the draw knife, and cut this out. Just draw knife this, and now when they go together, it'll look more traditional, more old-fashioned. You'll have a really wide chink groove that will go in and out that will resemble Pioneer construction. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a great look. And I mean, even this is the milled flat surface here. That could be worked with a foot adze to even, and that would really be a beautiful log. We've got two of them here. I guess it'd be clumsy for me to jump in front of you and throw my back to the camera, but we could show two of them together. But anyway,
I don't know.
It's they're pretty big.
they are, but they are a nice log, and he can even just flat plane one side and leave this side kind of rough, which adds another cool look. And you can see the saw marks in it, which gives it another great look. So all kinds of logs.
Great natural material. And beautiful homes. And I'm lucky to get to photograph them a lot of times too.
He literally was out there for hours with his camera, and it's not here. So it's too bad. It would have been fun to see.
Oh, maybe I'll throw up a little video on the site. But we've kept folks long enough. But You know, think about the geography of where you intend to build that log home. And if you don't live in that area currently and you're planning to move to that area, even small distances, say in Texas, which is to me far less exotic than this canyon country and all this Bryce Canyon and Zion and these fabulous places out here in the West. But even in the East Texas, it matters, or in the zone between, in 150 miles between where we're headquartered in Longview, Texas, and Dallas, Texas, you get onto blackland clays. And that makes an enormous difference in the foundation because those expansive soils can heave a house around. You get into northern latitudes and you start getting into different climate zones that you need different depths of foundation because you have to get below that frost line or else the water in the soil will heave that house around and just rack it. And all those things sound complicated from our end, and they get involved in getting you a good price so that we can have a good conversation with you. But it's really simple. These things are all simple in your individual circumstances. So that's the reason it's almost, this is almost an apology video. We'd like to just publish a price and be simple.
I had a guy get kind of upset with me a couple weeks ago because he said, I can walk onto any car lot in the country and get a price immediately. And I says, well, it just doesn't work that way with a home. There's just too many variables that go into a home.
No.
So.
All right, folks. I'm a little disappointed in our. I had higher ambitions for today with some nice graphics, and here it is, just two guys on camera talking with none of the pictures we showed. But come see us. Mark will give you a tour of the mill. Go on vacation in Utah. You can't go wrong with that. And swing by here in Gunnison, or if you're in. Did you know that Great Smoky Mountain National Park is more visited than Yellowstone or the Grand Canyon?
Oh, wow.
Or Yosemite or any of these great western parks. Great Smoky Mountains there, which is on the border of eastern Tennessee and western North Carolina. That is more visited than any of these great western parks. Anyway, Great Smoky Mountains happens to be easy distance from our office in LJ. So a lot of people there. When you're in these great places and dreaming of your log home, we're close by, so come see us. Or in Texas, for whatever.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys. I gotta turn around and hit the fade to black.